The other was a martial arts master who had trained special forces, law enforcement, and some of the most elite fighters on the planet. But on this day, they walked in wearing plain clothes, no bodyguards, no cameras, no announcements. They looked like regular people, and in a gym where status meant everything, that was a mistake. The fighters saw weakness. They saw easy targets. They saw two old men who didn't belong, so they mocked them. Loudly, in front of everyone, they made jokes about yoga studios and senior centers. They laughed at their clothes, their age, their quiet demeanor. The entire gym watched. Some people looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. And the two older men, they stayed calm. They didn't argue. They didn't defend themselves. They just listened. But that calm wasn't weakness. It was control. It was confidence. It was the kind of silence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and having nothing to prove. And when the truth finally came out, those fighters would realize they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because one of those men was Manny Pacquiao, and the other was Seagal. Two different fighting styles, two different backgrounds, but one unforgettable lesson about respect, humility, and the danger of judging people by their appearance. This is what happened next. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked? Do you think these fighters deserved a second chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. This wasn't your average gym. This was Iron Legacy, a private training facility in West Hollywood where Hollywood actors, professional fighters, and billionaires trained side by side. Membership, $5,000 a month, and that didn't include personal training sessions or access to the private recovery suites. The walls were lined with autographed gloves from UFC champions. Flat-screen TVs mounted everywhere played highlight reels of brutal knockouts on repeat. The equipment was state-of-the-art. Custom-built heavy bags that could withstand the hardest punches. Olympic-grade weights. A full-size octagon in the center of the main floor. Everything about this place screamed exclusivity. If you trained here, you weren't just working out. You were making a statement. You were saying you belonged among the elite. But there was an unspoken rule at Iron Legacy. If you look weak, you get ignored. The trainers here didn't waste time on beginners. They didn't hold your hand or give you encouragement just for showing up. If you couldn't prove yourself in the first sparring session, you were invisible. You could be standing right next to someone, and they'd look straight through you like you didn't exist. Because in this world, respect wasn't given freely. It was earned in the ring. It was earned through sweat, blood, and the ability to take a hit and keep going. Your net worth didn't matter here. Your job title didn't matter. What mattered was how hard you could punch, how fast you could move, and whether you had the guts to step into the octagon when everyone was watching. On this particular afternoon, the gym was packed. A heavyweight fighter was hitting the bag, so hard the entire room could feel the vibration through the floor. Each punch landed with a deep, thunderous sound that echoed off the walls. Two MMA competitors were drilling takedowns in the corner, their coaches barking commands at them like drill sergeants. Down, up, sprawl, counter again. Faster. The energy was intense, everyone was locked in, focused, pushing their bodies to the limit. You could smell the sweat in the air. You could hear the grunting, the heavy breathing, the sound of gloves smacking against pads. This was a place where serious people came to do serious work. And then the front door opened. Two men walked in, both in their 60s. One wore a simple gray hoodie and old sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. The other had on a faded black jacket and sunglasses, the kind you'd buy at a gas station. No flashy logos, no designer gear, no expensive watches or chains. They looked ordinary, like two guys who had just wandered in off the street. Maybe they were lost. Maybe they were looking for a different gym. But this was Iron Legacy. And in a place like this, looking ordinary was a problem. Because here, your appearance mattered. The way you carried yourself mattered. If you walked in looking like you didn't belong, people noticed, and they judged. The two men moved slowly toward the front desk, glancing around like they were taking in the atmosphere. A few people looked up from their workouts. Most didn't even bother. Just two more random people who probably couldn't afford the membership anyway. But there was something about the way they moved. Something calm. Something steady. They weren't intimidated by the noise or the intensity. They didn't seem nervous or out of place. They just walked in like they had every right to be there, and that quiet confidence, that was about to become very important. Jake noticed them first. He was wrapping his hands near the water station when the two older men walked past. He nudged Dante with his elbow and smirked. "Yo, check out the senior citizens." Dante looked over and laughed under his breath. "Bro, did they get lost on the way to pilots?" The two men didn't react. They simply walked toward the locker room, moving at their own pace. But Jake wasn't done. He had an audience now. A few people had glanced over when he spoke, and Jake loved attention. He raised his voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, old man, you need help finding the yoga studio. This is a real gym." A few people chuckled nervously. Some looked away, uncomfortable. But no one said anything. The man in the gray hoodie stopped walking. He didn't turn around. He just paused. His shoulders didn't tense. His body language didn't change. He simply stood there for a moment. Jake took it as weakness. He grinned wider and took a step closer. "Yeah, I'm talking to you. This place isn't for tourists." Dante joined in, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe he's here to watch his grandson train." More laughter. Louder this time. Now the whole gym was watching. The heavyweight stopped hitting the bag. The two MMA fighters paused their drilling. Even the trainers glanced over to see what was happening. And still the two men said nothing. They just stood there. Calm. Unbothered. It was almost eerie how unaffected they seemed. Jake walked closer, his confidence growing with every step. "You gonna say something, old man? Or are you just gonna stand there looking confused?" The man in the gray hoodie finally turned around. Slowly. His movements were controlled, deliberate. His face was calm, almost amused. He looked Jake directly in the eyes and said one word, "Continue." "That's it, nothing else." Jake blinked, caught off guard. "What? Continue?" The man repeated, his voice steady and even. "I'm listening." Dante laughed from behind. "Oh, he's got jokes. Cute." But something about the man's tone made Jake uncomfortable. There was no fear in his voice. No anger. No defensiveness. Just calm. The kind of calm that didn't make sense. Most people would have been embarrassed by now. They would have defended themselves or walked away. But this guy, he was just standing there, waiting. Like he had all the time in the world. Still, Jake's ego wouldn't let him back down. Not in front of everyone. He crossed his arms and leaned in slightly. "Look, I don't know what you're doing here, but this gym is for serious athletes. You probably want the Planet Fitness down the street." A few people laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. The energy in the room was shifting. Some of the other gym members were starting to look uncomfortable. One woman near the treadmills whispered to her friend, "This is kind of messed up." But Jake didn't notice. He was too busy playing to the crowd. Dante stepped up beside him, feeding off the attention. "Seriously though, no offense, but you guys look like you're about to pull a muscle just walking in here." He glanced around, waiting for more laughter. It came, but quieter now. The man in the gray hoodie still didn't react. He just kept looking at Jake with that same calm expression. And the man in the black jacket, the one with the sunglasses, hadn't said a word. He was just watching, observing, like he was taking mental notes of everything that was happening. Jake pointed at the locker room. "Look, if you guys want to change and leave, no one's gonna stop you. But if you're actually planning to work out, maybe start with something light. We don't need anyone getting hurt." His tone was condescending, dripping with fake concern. Dante added,
"Yeah,
"There's a stretching area in the back. Might be more your speed." The room was silent now except for the hum of the ventilation system. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next, and the two older men still hadn't said more than a few words. They just stood there, patient, controlled, like they were waiting for Jake and Dante to finish their performance. Have you ever witnessed someone being disrespected like this in public? What would you have done if you were there? Let us know in the comments below. The man in the gray hoodie, let's call him M for now, slowly unzipped his jacket. Underneath, he wore a plain white t-shirt. His arms were lean, defined. Not bulky like a bodybuilder, but clearly trained. You could see the muscle definition even from across the room. He walked over to the heavy bag without saying a word. Jake and Dante exchanged glances. Jake grinned and whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Oh, he's actually gonna try." Dante shook his head, amused. "This should be good." M didn't respond. He pulled out hand wraps from his pocket and began wrapping his hands. Carefully, methodically. Each wrap was precise, like he'd done it 10,000 times before. His movements weren't rushed. There was no hesitation, just muscle memory. The kind that only comes from years of repetition. He finished wrapping and flexed his fingers a few times, testing the tension. Then he stood in front of the heavy bag. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing, centering himself. The gym had gone quieter now. People were watching even if they were pretending not to, and then M threw a single jab. TUD. The sound cut through the gym like a gunshot. Sharp, clean, powerful. The bag swung violently backward, the chain rattling above. A few heads turned. M threw another. THE. The bag swung again, harder this time, then across. THED. The impact echoed through the entire space. Then a combination. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Toe should T. The speed was inhuman. Each punch landed in perfect rhythm, like a drumbeat, fast, precise, devastating. The power behind each strike made the bag look like it weighed nothing. Jake's smile started to fade. Dante stopped stretching and stood up straighter. His eyes locked on the bag. One of the trainers in the corner whispered to his client, barely audible, "Holy shit, is that?" But M wasn't done. He moved around the bag now, his footwork smooth and effortless. He slipped to the left, threw a hook, pivoted right, threw a body shot. His feet barely made a sound on the floor. It looked like dancing, but every movement had purpose. Every step set up the next punch. He threw combinations that most fighters would struggle to execute even at half speed. And he made it look easy. No wasted energy, no wild swings, just clean technical, brutal efficiency. The whole time his face remained calm, no gritting teeth, no grunting, no showing off, just focus. Pure, unshakable focus. An older woman on the treadmill pulled out her phone. She slowed her pace and zoomed in on M's face, trying to get a better look. Her eyes went wide. She tapped the person next to her on the elliptical. "That's Manny Pacquiao." The whisper spread like wildfire. Wet, no way. Are you serious? Is it really him? More people stopped what they were doing. Some pulled out their phones trying to confirm. Others just stared, mouths open. Jake heard the whispers. His stomach dropped. He glanced at Dante, whose face had gone pale. But they couldn't just walk away now. Everyone was watching. M continued working the bag, oblivious to the growing realization around him. Or maybe he wasn't oblivious. Maybe he knew exactly what was happening and just didn't care. He threw another flurry. 6 punches in less than 2 seconds. Each one landed perfectly. The bag shook so hard it looked like it might come off the chain. One of the trainers walked closer, his arms crossed, nodding slowly. "That's textbook Pacquiao," he muttered. "Look at that footwork. That's not something you can fake." Another gym member whispered to his friend, "Dude, we just watched 2 idiots insult Manny Pacquiao." His friend shook his head in disbelief. "This is insane." M finally stepped back from the bag. He unwrapped his hands slowly, calmly, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just put on a clinic in front of an entire gym. He grabbed a towel and wiped his face. Still silent, still unbothered. And then the man in the black jacket stepped forward. And then the second man stepped forward. The one in the faded black jacket. He removed his sunglasses slowly and folded them into his pocket, and the room went completely silent, because everyone recognized that face. Steven Seagal, actor, martial artist, Aikido master, a man who had trained law enforcement, military units and fighters for decades. Jake's face went pale. All the color drained from his cheeks in seconds. Dante looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His hands hung limply at his sides, frozen. Steven walked slowly toward them, no anger, no aggression, just presence. The kind of presence that fills a room without saying a word. He stopped a few feet away from Jake and Dante, close enough that they could see the calm in his eyes. The kind of calm that comes from someone who's been in real danger and knows what actual threat looks like. And this wasn't it. He spoke in a low, measured voice. "You wanted to know if we belong here?" He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We do." The silence was deafening. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Steven turned to the gym owner, who had just walked in from the back office, drawn by the commotion. The owner's name was Marcus, a former boxer with graying hair and a scar above his left eyebrow. His eyes went wide when he saw who was standing in the middle of his gym. Steven nodded at him. "Mind if I borrow your space for a demonstration?" Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded slowly, still processing what was happening. Steven looked back at Jake and Dante. "You two. Step forward." Neither of them moved. Their legs felt like concrete. "I'm not going to hurt you," Steven said calmly. "But I am going to show you something." Reluctantly, Jake took a step forward. Then another. Dante followed, his movements stiff and mechanical. They stood in front of Stephen like schoolboys called to the principal's office. Stephen motioned to Jake, "Throw a punch." "Any punch." Jake's eyes darted around the room. "Just throw it." Stephen repeated. "Don't think, just throw." Jake swallowed hard and threw a slow, hesitant jab. It was weak, uncommitted. Nothing like the cocky energy he had 5 minutes ago. In less than a second, Stephen redirected Jake's arm with a subtle movement of his hand. He stepped to the side, almost casually, and then using Jake's own momentum, he gently guided him to the floor. No force, no violence, just control. Jake landed on his back, staring up at the ceiling, completely bewildered. He hadn't even felt what happened. 1 second he was throwing a punch, the next he was on the ground. The entire gym watched in stunned silence. Stephen extended his hand and helped Jake to his feet. "Strength without control is just noise," he said quietly. Jake nodded, unable to form words. His hands were trembling slightly. Stephen turned to Dante. "Your turn." Dante shook his head quickly. "No, I'm good. I'm really good." Stephen raised an eyebrow. "You were confident a few minutes ago." Dante's jaw clenched. He knew he couldn't back down now. Not after everything he'd said. He stepped forward and threw a punch, faster than Jake's but still tentative. Stephen moved like water. He didn't block the punch. He didn't counter. He simply redirected Dante's energy, turned his body slightly, and Dante found himself off balance, stumbling forward. Stephen caught him by the shoulder and steadied him before he fell. "See that?" Stephen said, his voice calm and instructional. "You gave me your balance. I didn't take it. You gave it to me." Dante stood there, breathing hard, his ego shattered. Stephen looked at both of them. Fighting isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about understanding yourself and respecting your opponent. He paused. "You judged us. You assumed we were weak because we didn't look like what you expected." His eyes moved across the gym, addressing everyone now. "That's the mistake. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to." The room was absolutely silent. People were hanging on every word. Stephen stepped back and crossed his arms. "Now? Do you want to learn? Or do you want to keep pretending you already know everything?" Jake and Dante both nodded quickly. "We want to learn," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. Stephen nodded. "Good, then listen carefully." The gym owner, Marcus, stepped to the center of the room. His presence commanded immediate attention. He raised his hand for silence, though the gym was already dead quiet. "Everyone, listen up." The room somehow got even quieter. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Marcus looked at Manny and Stephen, then back at the crowd gathered around them. "Some of you may know these two men. Some of you don't." He gestured toward Manny. "This is Manny Pacquiao, 8-division world champion, senator, philanthropist, living legend." A few people gasped. Others nodded, confirming what they'd already suspected. Then Marcus gestured toward Stephen. "And this is Stephen Seagal, 7th-degree black belt in Aikido, martial arts icon, teacher to fighters and warriors around the world." The room erupted in whispers. People pulled out their phones, trying to process what they were hearing. Marcus raised his hand again, and the noise died down. "But what you don't know is that they're also co-investors in this gym." Dead silence. The kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat. Jake's jaw literally dropped open. Dante closed his eyes and hung his head, the weight of his mistake crushing down on him. A few people in the crowd exchanged shocked glances. Marcus continued, his voice steady and deliberate. "They visit every few months. Unannounced, in disguise. No security, no fanfare." He let that sink in for a moment. "Why?" He paused for dramatic effect, looking around the room. "To see how we treat people. To see if this gym truly lives up to its values." His eyes landed directly on Jake and Dante. "And today, you failed the test." The words hit like a hammer. Jake looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Dante's hands were shaking at his sides. Manny stepped forward, his movements calm and unhurried. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. The kind of voice that doesn't need to yell to be heard. "In boxing, I learned that your biggest opponent is not the man in front of you. It's your own ego." He looked directly at Jake. "You judged us before you knew us. You saw gray hair and old clothes and assumed weakness." Then his gaze shifted to Dante. "And you laughed. You encouraged it. You made it worse." Dante flinched like he'd been struck. Stephen added, his tone calm but cutting. "True strength is not in how hard you can hit. It's in how you treat people when you think no one important is watching." He let those words hang in the air. "But here's the truth. Someone is always watching, and more importantly, you're watching yourself. He tapped his chest. You have to live with the person you become when you think it doesn't matter. The entire gym felt the weight of that statement. Even people who hadn't been involved were reflecting on their own behavior. Marcus stepped forward again. This gym was built on respect, on discipline, on the idea that strength means nothing without character. He looked around at everyone. If you can't treat a stranger with dignity, you don't belong here. I don't care how strong you are or how much money you have. The message was clear. Then Manny did something no one expected. He smiled, not a smug smile, not a mocking smile, a genuine, warm smile. But we're not here to punish you. He extended his hand toward Jake. We're here to teach you, if you're willing to learn. Jake stared at the hand like it was the most important thing in the world. His eyes were watering. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and shook it. I'm so sorry, sir. I was an idiot. I was disrespectful and arrogant, and I'm truly sorry. His voice cracked on the last word. Manny gripped his hand firmly. We all make mistakes. The question is, what do you do next? Jake nodded, unable to speak. Dante stepped forward, his head still bowed. I'm sorry, too. To both of you, and to everyone here who had to watch that. He looked up, meeting their eyes for the first time. I've got no excuse. I was wrong. Stephen nodded slowly. Apology accepted. Now the real work begins. He looked at both of them. You want to be fighters? Then learn what it really means. It's not about intimidation. It's about discipline, respect, and knowing when not to fight. Marcus clapped his hands together once. All right. Everyone back to training. And remember what you saw here today. People slowly returned to their stations, but the energy had completely changed. Manny gathered everyone in the center of the gym. People formed a loose circle around him, some sitting on benches, others standing with their arms crossed. The atmosphere had shifted completely from earlier. There was no ego now, no posturing, just people listening. Let me tell you a story, Manny said, his voice carrying easily through the quiet space. When I was young, I was so poor I had to sleep on cardboard boxes. My family didn't have money for a bed. Sometimes we didn't have money for food. He paused, looking around at the faces watching him. People looked at me and saw nothing. Just another street kid from the Philippines with no future. A few people nodded, hanging on every word. I was small. I was skinny. I didn't look like a fighter. He smiled slightly, but one person saw potential. One coach gave me a chance. He didn't judge me by my appearance. He looked deeper. Manny's expression grew more serious, and that changed everything. That one act of respect, of seeing me as a person worth investing in, changed my entire life. He looked directly at Jake and Dante. Don't judge people by what you see on the outside. You have no idea what they've been through. You have no idea what they're capable of. His voice softened. And more importantly, you have no idea how your words affect them. Some people carry those insults forever. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Stephen stepped forward, standing beside Manny. I've trained with kings and criminals, with soldiers and students, with people who had everything and people who had nothing. He looked around the gym, and you know what I've learned? He paused. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. A few people smiled, recognizing the truth in that. Real power is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Stephen looked at Jake and Dante again. You were loud today. You wanted everyone to see how tough you were, how superior you were. He let that sink in, but all you proved was insecurity. People who are truly confident don't need to tear others down. Jake nodded, his head still bowed. Stephen's tone softened slightly. But here's the good news. You recognized your mistake. You apologized. That takes courage. He looked at the rest of the gym. Most people double down when they're wrong. They defend their ego instead of admitting fault. But these two did the harder thing. Dante wiped his eyes quickly, trying to stay composed. Marcus stepped forward one last time. From this day forward, things are going to be different at Iron Legacy. He looked around at everyone. We're not just building strong bodies here. We're building strong character. He pointed at the Iron Legacy logo on the wall. Legacy isn't about how much weight you can lift or how many fights you've won. It's about how you treat people. It's about what you leave behind. The room was completely still. If anyone in this gym ever witnesses disrespect like what happened today, I want you to speak up. Don't just watch. Don't just feel uncomfortable. He made eye contact with several people. Say something. Because silence is agreement. Manny put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. This gym has the potential to be something special. Not because of the equipment. Not because of the famous people who train here. He looked around at everyone. But because of the culture you build. The standards you hold each other to. Stephen added one final thought. Remember this. You never know who you're standing next to. That person you judge, that person you dismiss might be someone extraordinary. He smiled slightly. But more importantly, every person deserves respect simply because they're human. Not because of what they've accomplished or who they are. The gym erupted in applause. Not the polite kind, the genuine kind. People clapped and nodded, visibly moved by what they'd witnessed. Jake and Dante stood side by side, humbled but grateful. From that day forward, Iron Legacy changed. The culture shifted from ego to respect, from judgment to growth. New members were welcomed instead of ignored. Veterans helped beginners instead of dismissing them. And it all started because two legends walked in disguised as ordinary men and taught everyone a lesson they'd never forget. Never judge someone by their appearance. You never know who you're standing next to. And more importantly, you never know who you could become if you choose respect over arrogance. Which moment in this story hit you the hardest? Have you ever misjudged someone and later regretted it? What would you have done if you were in that gym? Drop your answers in the comments below and let us know what stories you want to see next. More incredible stories are coming soon. Thank you for watching. Stay humble, stay strong.